Hey everybody, I'm your host. As stated on my music videos and animated music videos, you can check out on my file. I am your host, Joe JDF Foster, and today, due to a question asked by Chris Lynch, I'm going to go over why soap operas are important to me. His question was actually if I was to change things in soap operas, such as the history of a character in some way or a storyline, how I would rewrite it. And while I have thought about that, no lie, and I have changed, I've also the reason why I don't like the idea of changing them or retconning them a lot of times is because when you do that, you have to think about how that one change affects their life and how it changes the person as well as the people around them in it. But anyways, let's start with an easy thing. Why I got into soap operas. I was a little kid, hadn't even started school yet, and my grandmother was watching me. Well, I went into my room because it was after the Price is Right. There was nothing on until mid to late afternoon, and when I watched like Ghost Rider, Kids Incorporated, shows like that. Well, one day I was flipping through channels and I came across the opening credits of Young and the Restless, which happened to be the first soap opera I started watching as a kid, and I watched it. It was alright, it wasn't anything great to me, but it was a way to pass the time until the shows I actually enjoyed came on. Well, as I got older, and once I started school and everything, so I got into sports and everything. And I say this with all honest belief in my heart. People who tell you that soap operas are for women only are lying to you and themselves, because soap operas or daytime dramas, as they're known to a lot of people, including my members of my family, are actually really good and well done. That they can bring in men, women, even children can watch them, and it would be all right in my view. And yeah, there's some situations they don't need to see, some that could be glossed over, and but there's also things that you could explain to your children through the soap operas as they happen, and it actually be helpful for a child and parent relationship, or even among friends. And anyways, back to my point. When I was in school, I'd get home around 3:30, somewhere in that area. Well, the only soap opera that was on at that time was General Hospital, and I fell in love with that one almost instantly from the moment I first saw it. And then I continued to watch it, and later on in the early to mid 90s, One Life to Live and All My Children joined in, so I became an ABC daytime channel fanatic when I didn't have school, and I'd watch those when I could. And one of the things I really enjoy, okay, and now on to the enjoyment of them. One great thing about them is they're not genre specific. You get romance, comedy, action, tragedy, pretty much anything you can find a film for, minus your X-rated, minus the X-rated material, you'd be able to find on daytime dramas, same as primetime dramas. But the thing that makes them special as compared to the primetime dramas, daytime dramas or soap operas could be seen every day except the weekends on Saturday and Sunday, and until they started up that whole soap opera network that they had going. I don't know if it's still going or not. But when they had that running, you could watch the soaps on the weekend for those who had to work during the week and couldn't find a way to record or watch the shows then. But like I said, I could see them every day. And another good thing about it was you didn't have, whereas the episodes that are on primetime dramas are often weekly, where it'd be like, oh, we're going to do an episode here, and then they could leave you on a cliffhanger for a week, making you wait for it and draw it out. Soap operas weren't really known for doing that because of them being every day. They could end on one hanging point, catch you on it the next day when the next episode started. The only times you had to worry about were when the president decided they wanted to speak or some breaking news moment hit, and that was about it. Otherwise, you'd be able to keep up with the stories and everything. And like with, and like I stated in the anime, the soap operas and pro wrestling all have this in common, that you can find characters. Well, I did anyways. That I found characters that I could enjoy or somewhat relate to, and in the same way, like I said, with anime, plays, and movies and pro wrestling. That's the reason why I enjoy them so much. Another good thing is, soap operas and daytime dramas are known for doing recycled storylines, where like, oh, they used this storyline for this person, and then turn around and have it. It could be not even a year to 10 years gone by. I mean, not even a year to 5 years, and it could be up to 10 years that I've seen. And they would have the same storyline come back in some way and then change it to where it would fit to the new character that they're using in the storyline. But the difference being is if you had a good enough actor playing the storyline, playing their character in the storyline and was actually honest with it, it would actually be just as good as when they originally used it, if not better at times. And another thing that made them so enjoyable is that they could do controversial topics and even show how the time frame of when they were doing these controversial topics, how these subjects were dealt with. Examples of this are abuse, such as One Life to Live. Victoria Lord, she was a character that was sexually abused by her father as a child, and her friend, she had two people in her life that were her age. Dorian Lord, which I might be wrong about the age on that, and then the woman that was her best friend, Irene Manning, who were sleeping with Victor. And Victor at the time was sleeping with Irene. Irene was Vicky's best friend in like high school, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was a high school friendship. And Dorian later married the man, and became Vicky's stepmother, so to speak, and actually lived up to the stereotypical wicked stepmother idea in a way. But with Vicky Lord, Vicky Buchanan, as Vicky is the name she would go by. She developed trust issues for the longest time. Also, due to her father's sexual abuse towards her, the trauma would later develop in multiple personalities, or what's more commonly today known as dissociative identity disorder, where she had the Gene Randolph, who was one character. Gene Randolph. She had Nikki, the wild side of her. Vicky was the natural personality, but there was Nikki and Gene and other personalities that came along with it. Ever do this trauma, and it actually showed it on the show where these personalities would emerge at times, and a lot of times when these personalities emerged, it was due to something else that brought up the memories in her, or because they needed these characters in order to sell the story. But these personalities were not taken lightly. When they were brought in, they served their purpose, and they even made the story better because the actress that played her, I want to say she actually seemed to study these things and know how it works, and brought the character to life. It showed how each personality had its own style to it that mattered. Another example of the rape being taking importance was the Todd Manning. Of abuse. Another example of abuse. Sorry, I got ahead of myself on this. Another example of the abuse being done was Todd Manning by Peter Manning. Todd was the illegitimate son of Irene Manning and Victor Lord's affair, though it wouldn't be revealed till the late 80s, early 90s about this. I'm not sure exactly when the Todd Manning character was brought into the show. That's the reason why I say late 80s, early 90s. I know in the early 90s is when he became the popular character they did. And when they went over his past, see, everybody used to think Todd was a jerk. I used to see it and realize that there was something off about the way he was acting. When I was younger, yeah, I thought he was a prick, and I thought he was a bad person. But when he got older, when I got older, I realized a lot of his actions seemed to reflect on abuse situations that you would have heard about in books and other things if you'd actually researched them. And it was revealed in one episode that Todd's father Todd's supposed father at this time, as it was revealed throughout the show, that Peter Manning was in fact actually his stepfather. Well, growing up, Peter Manning was an abusive man he's one of those that fits into the stereotype. Respected by the town, but in the home, nobody wanted anything to do with him because they were scared of him because he was so abusive. Peter couldn't keep a wife, a girlfriend around, and actually made a point of it that Todd was not allowed to have anybody at the house when he wasn't home. And Todd admitted this during one storyline that they did, where it came up that he was in like a hostage situation. Well, Todd admitted that his stepfather, when he was a kid, and Todd would mess up or make a mistake, as kids do, Peter would go overboard. At first, he started out with this lighter that Todd liked as a kid. Well, one day Peter saw him looking at it and decided he'd teach him a lesson about looking at Peter's stuff without asking or even going after her. He took the lighter, took Todd's hand, held the lighter underneath it, and waited for it to burn him. From then on, that would be one way he'd torture the kid. And as Todd got older, Peter got more obvious. Got more, smart, so to speak, about it. And finding a way to torture the kid. He would actually find a way to leave bruises on him, but he'd make sure that he wouldn't leave the bruises where people would notice that well. Like on the ribs or on the back. Well, it was revealed also during this little span that Peter used to take the buckle end of a belt rather than the strap and would beat Todd with it until he bled, which, though they did this, it did make me question why Todd never had any scars on his back or anywhere that they showed from where Peter did this. And this caused him to have trust and relationship issues. His self-esteem was low, where he felt he had to get others he had to make others feel bad in order for him to feel good, or he had to take control of the situation and basically become a control freak, so to speak. He had to be the leader of the pack, or else he was a failure, and I think this is due, like I said, to the Peter Manning abuse, leading to him having these issues. Another one that was taken after the 2000s, and that was taken 2009 or later, the Christina Corinthos Davis relationship abuse. Not really something that was tackled during the 90s from what I could see. Well, not a lot, but it did start to become more talked about on primetime drama deals in the late 80s and early 90s. Well, Christina's in General Hospital's Christina Corinthos Davis relationship storyline with a rich boy named Kiefer Bauer. That one is the first one I can think of where the relationship abuse took the effect that it did with a teenager being involved rather than an adult. During this, there was verbal abuse that was done where the guy caught her talking to another guy that personally I think would have made a good couple for her. Ethan Lovett was the other character's name. But the boyfriend, Kiefer, saw her talking to the guy and immediately jumped to the idea that she wanted to have sex with this guy, and told her and asked her in a verbally abusive way why she didn't just get up on the table and dance for him like she was a stripper, an exotic dancer type deal. And then there's also the idea of, there's one I had that I think it was also sexual abuse, because the first time that her and Kiefer had slept together, her first time was with Kiefer, and he used the idea of, well, at least in my view, this is how it would have been seen, was the "if you love me" type circumstance, where it made her feel like she had to sleep with him in order to prove herself to him. And if I understand the law system correctly, pretty sure using that as a reason to get her to have sex with him actually qualifies as coercion, where he got her to do something she didn't want to do willingly at first, because where she didn't want to do it willingly, but he talked her into it by basically making it sound like she didn't love, that was her way to prove her love, or that he was going to break up with her. And third, and the one that was most prevalent, was the physical abuse. Multiple occasions, it had showed that Kiefer would raise his hand to her, grab her on the arm enough to leave bruises, and a couple of times he had actually beaten her. He'd hit her once, and she claimed that this character Ethan did it, even though he didn't. And then when she actually got full-on physically beaten bad enough that she was actually put into the hospital, she again began to accuse Ethan of it, and most of the town, due to the previous, the prior experience where she had accused him, had thought Ethan had done it and went after him and wanted to kill him. But thankfully, there were some characters who thought that it seemed odd that Ethan would take her to the hospital after having beaten her that badly, and checked in on it, and it was revealed that it had actually been her boyfriend who had done it. My problem with this storyline, though, when they did it, is the fact that they would later retcon it. Instead of it being that the rich can be abused, that even a teenager can have anger issues and be abusive, and just because he's rich, he can't. They changed it to where the father had been abusing the mother and the son when they retconned it, instead of leaving it that Kiefer was just the abuse thing, because you hadn't heard a thing about Kiefer until Christina had basically went to the hospital. It was almost the first time that you actually really see anything to do with the father being involved, and then they brought that out that, oh, by the way, he'd been abusing his wife and child this whole time, and they'd just been keeping it secret. And Kiefer was just reacting on what he had learned. Now, I'm not saying this doesn't happen, because it does, but the fact that they changed the storyline the way they did made me think that they actually had it planned to go with Kiefer was just that bad of a guy. And then they saw that, oh, fans might not be happy about this, that we're having a teenager beat up on somebody. Beat up on a teenage girl and be this much of a prick, be this much of a jerk. So they changed it to where the father had been abusing them in order to fix that. Personally, I think it would make more sense to leave it that Kiefer was an abusive kid. Not a kid who was abused that took on the abusive behavior. But in fact, he was an abusive kid who felt that he was entitled. Because Christina made him look bad is actually what made him go over there that night and beat her so bad that she wound up in the hospital. Okay, another topic, as I stated earlier, by mistake, but now I'm going to get to, is the controversial topic of rape in the storylines. The biggest example I can think of this, the earliest one, besides the Victoria stuff that was brought up later on, is actually in the idea that with General Hospital, Luke and Laura in the late 70s when Luke rapes Laura. These two, what's interesting is that these two would actually end up together later on after the incident and some time had passed. But the way this, when this happened, it happened where Luke was working. Laura came over to visit. Luke had been drinking. He loved Laura, couldn't handle his emotions, apparently. And from all the drinking he'd done, he ended up attacking her and raping her in this storyline. Even though we never actually see the rape occur, it switches to a disco ball spinning round and round with the lights spinning and playing a song. And Luke, the whole time, is saying, can be heard saying, "I'm sorry," and apologizing to her. The way this one was done, it made it look, it was more about the alcohol had affected his judgment and drove him to it. And then basically got dropped. The whole storyline pretty much changed after that. And like I said, what's interesting is that Laura would later fall for Luke, and they would end up married and having kids. An interesting fact about this, when Luke and Laura got married in the early 80s, Princess Diana got married. But she was such a big fan of this but her, people waited. When Luke and Laura got married, Princess Diana's wedding in the 80s, around the same time, had been done. It didn't get nearly as many people watching it as this did. And it also, Princess Diana was a big fan of the couple, was a big fan of them, and even sent Anthony Geary and Jenny Francis, the people who played Luke and Laura on General Hospital, 2 bottles of champagne. One of them, I'm guessing, was drunk. The other one, and I think it was Anthony Geary that did this. It might have been Jenny Francis, but I'm pretty sure. If you look it up, it's Anthony Geary that did this. Actually turned the champagne bottle into a lamp instead of actually just drinking it and getting rid of the bottle. He actually turned it into a lamp, from what I read. And also, it's, to this day, it is still rated the highest ratings for an hour in American soap opera history. And in 1996, which I think this is messed up that this is as high as they got, out of the top 100 most memorable moments in TV history, Luke and Laura's wedding, that was so well loved and watched around the world, basically, especially in North America, for America to have it as the still highest rated hour of American soap opera history. And the wedding wasn't even the whole episode. But anyways, 1996, TV Guide gave this the number 35 rating, which to me seems like they were snubbing, and that the people were probably more fans of other things, or that and I want to know what else they were actually voting on when they did this, that this only got number 35. But the thing about this story is that later on, the story would come back, with the Luke and Laura rape storyline, it would later be brought back and done with where the children found out about it. When the oldest son of Luke and Laura, known as Lucky Spencer, or Lucas Lorenzo Spencer Jr., but everybody called him Lucky, found out about it, he actually moved out of the house because he couldn't stand to be around his father. And then later on, Lulu found out about it. And Lulu was actually more disillusioned by it because she had such a high image of her parents and their love, thinking it was what she wanted. Well, when she found out about it and her image was shattered, she actually had to go to Lucky to comfort her. And her brothers both knew about the rape by this time, because she actually had because Laura had actually had another son by the Cassadine family that was known as Nicholas. Well, Nicholas is the one who ended up telling Lucky. Lucky and Nicholas decided that Lulu didn't need to know that her little sister, Leslie Lou Spencer, known as Lulu for short, didn't need to know about this, that she could have that happy image of her parents and they wouldn't do anything to correct it. But it got brought up and revealed, and it broke her image of them. And for a long time, she had issues with her father as well, same as Lucky did. But both ended up deciding to move on instead of letting that control their life and finding out about it. And Luke and Laura's way of dealing with it, with Luke, it was his biggest regret in his life for the fact that happened. And with Laura, she didn't really speak about it, and even later, like I said, they made it seem like it was more the alcohol than anything, than it was actually Luke's fault. Also, on the topic of rape, the character of Kendall on All My Children, who is Erica Kane's oldest daughter, was actually born from Erica being raped and giving birth to her, but she gave her up for adoption thinking it was best. And because she couldn't handle it at the time. Kendall, growing up, had these issues that would later come into play because she couldn't stand the fact that Erica had kept her younger sister, Bianca, and gotten rid of her. And it drove her insane because of it. Well, it didn't drive her insane like full-on mentally, like institutionalized insane, but it drove her insane because on the emotional level, because it bothered her so much. Well, later on, she meets Bianca, and Bianca is eventually raped and ends up pregnant. Well, Bianca was actually considering at one point to abort the child that she'd gotten pregnant with from the rape. Well, Kendall found out because Bianca decided to tell her, and Kendall decided to let go of what had happened at that time and decided to be there for her sister because she felt it had brought them closer, and she had seen now how Kendall had reacted. Now felt that Bianca could understand why Kendall felt so bad in life and so undervalued. But Bianca ended up keeping the child and giving birth to her. And at first, Erica, who had wanted her to do the abortion out of concern, had actually found out that after they kept the child and the child was given birth to, that it had been kept from her all this time. And she actually told both her daughters she wanted nothing to do with them at the time because they kept her out of the dark. Though she would later turn her back on that decision and want to be with her family again because family did matter to her, despite what she may act. Now, on One Life to Live, in the early 90s, there was a rape that was done for the character of Marty Saybrook, committed by one of One Life to Live's biggest names on the show, Todd Manning. Todd had been getting tutored by Marty in hopes of keeping his grades up so that he could stay on the team. Well, he ended up failing a test. Well, he thought Marty did it to him on purpose, and at a party, him and two of his frat brothers ended up gang raping Marty in an upstairs room during the party. Due to this, there were trust issues shown in Marty, and at first, it treated it like a lot of people would treat a rape victim, at first claiming that, how it's been shown that a lot of people treat rape victims, and that they don't want to believe them, and that they think that since there was alcohol involved, that, her drinking, that it wasn't actually rape, it was a misunderstanding in the situation. Even though it was proven that she'd been tied up with sweatbands to the bed when this occurred. They said that, and they were going off the theory that, it was just something that happened. It was play gone wrong, and they thought that she wanted it still. Initially was the story they were going with. And They even used a medical condition that she had as trying to prove, because that with the alcohol caused her to act differently, is what led them to believe that what they did wasn't wrong. Well, then it was eventually treated and shown. Well, then it showed her going through all the stages that are typically shown through the rape victims, where they're angry, depressed, not wanting to be around people, and but instead of it just focusing on her doing it alone, it showed that her friends were there for her and were actually willing to help her, and even stand up to the guy when they took him to court over it. When they took Todd Maine and his two buddies to court, who were eventually found guilty when the attorney that they had hired to defend them turned on them after learning that it was in fact true that they had actually committed this sexual assault against her. She threw the case, and they were going to threaten with disbarment, but she ended up getting basically what equates to a warning from the way it looked, because she was able to practice forever and has even shown up on General Hospital in recent years, still actually practicing law. But again, during this storyline, Todd would come to regret what he did eventually, but not before he actually went to prison, even though he didn't end up in prison long. But another friend of his actually had a mental breakdown. One of the other people who participated in the event, known as Powell Lord, he actually had a mental break and had to be committed. Well, when Todd got out on a work release program and was working at a hospital, a bunch of nurses started getting attacked, and they started making it look like Todd had went back and started attacking these women. When it was eventually revealed it was Powell that actually did it, Todd realized when Powell mentioned a place called The Room that it was actually a reference to the place where they had attacked Marty. And when they did this, Todd was actually held hostage by Powell and had a gun pointed at him. A nasty sock or sweatband was shoved into his mouth. During this time, Todd truly came to regret his decision and realized what he'd actually, in a small part, put Marty through when he did what he did to her. This even ended on this episode, and when it came to that particular episode, Todd would actually end up apologizing to Marty and saying that he can never, and that though she may never be able to forgive him, he would understand because there's no way he can make up for what he did to her. And this would also come back later on, where Todd would again do something like that. But Todd, later on, would also try to do anything he could to make it up to Marty, to help her out when he could, because of so much guilt he had behind him. Also, when Todd found out he was actually Victor Lord Sr.'s son, and one of Vicky's brothers, as a retcon was later done for him to have a twin brother that he never knew about, Todd would actually find out what Victor had done and be worried he was actually going to become like Peter Manning and Victor Lord, because he didn't want to be like them because he found out he was going to be a father, and he didn't want that to happen. He didn't want to become like them. And then he found out what type of monsters they were, and what type of monster Victor Lord was, and it scared him even more to have a kid, because he was afraid he was going to become Victor Lord because of what he had done to Marty. Now, for the third thing I'm going to bring up that soaps have recycled in dealing with controversial topics, baby swapping and kidnapping, so to speak. On One Life to Live and All My Children, they did a crossover for a baby swap and kidnapping with the characters of Babe and Bianca on All My Children and Kelly Kramer on One Life to Live. Well, Babe and Bianca had given birth to their children during a stormy night in a cabin. A guy who piloted a helicopter ended up kidnapping one of the children at the hospital and took it to his half-sister, to Kelly Kramer in Lambview to raise, and didn't didn't let her know what he had done because he didn't want her to get in trouble, but he wanted her to be happy because she had recently miscarried the child that she was carrying, and instead let Bianca think her child had died, while letting Babe end up taking home Bianca's child and not letting them know. Well, this story was drug out for a long time, and it ended up, when the truth was revealed that the child was actually Bianca's, it actually drove a severe wedge between Bianca and Babe over the child, in their friendship, because all this time they'd been raising the child. Babe had been raising a child that was Bianca's, though Babe didn't actually know about it at the time until she was eventually told. However, Babe's then husband, JR, had found out, and he was unwilling to let the child go back to its mother because he didn't want to lose the son that he had, which brought up a big plot hole in the story to me when they did that. That one was a boy, one was a girl, and yet nobody knew somehow that Babe's child being a girl suddenly didn't raise an issue. Like I said, when JR found out, he was wanting to keep the child because he knew, because he didn't want to have to deal with the fact that he'd lost his son, so the daughter was a way of making it up for him. And it was keeping Babe and him together, but they were starting to have issues as it was. Well, Bianca's mother went to JR's father and told him that she demanded a DNA test be done so that it could prove one way or another whether the child was actually theirs or not. Meanwhile, in Lambview, the pilot who had taken the child to Kelly Kramer had actually started blackmailing because he was in need of cash. So he's blackmailing Kelly to do all these things for him, or he was going to reveal the truth. Well, JR didn't care whether the DNA said the child was his or not because he wanted to raise a child that was his. And that's how he saw it. But eventually the DNA test revealed it, and Bianca's child was returned to her. Kelly would later feel guilty, and as much as it pained her to take this child back, to give the child back to its real parents, she knew it was the right thing to do, and the child was given back. Though JR and Babe would end up divorcing, leading to another custody battle that would happen. And JR would end up having a drinking problem, would end up becoming an alcoholic and depressed and pushing his family away due to the whole thing coming out and losing, because he felt as if he lost both his son and his daughter, though he hadn't got, because of what had happened, which became a whole separate storyline even after he got the child back. After he got his son back, and then Babe fought him for custody of their son because of the way he had become. And my second example of the baby swapping storyline done right is the One Life to Live Hope, Manning, and Chloe Brennan storyline. Jessica Buchanan, daughter of Vicky Buchanan, had been retconned to where she had recently had developed DID like her mother had due to a similar traumatic childhood incident happening under the effects of one of Nikki's alters. Now, one of the effects of Vicky's alters known as Nikki Smith, who had been bar hopping and ended up going to this one bar where a guy who was at the bar would sit with Jessica, and ended up crossing a lot of lines and would have been in jail had it been revealed back then. Like I said, they retconned this to happen, and when they decided to give Jessica the DID issues, well, Jessica had gotten pregnant Jessica had gotten pregnant for a second time by her recent boyfriend, who she was planning to marry, named Nash Brennan. Well, Nash wound up dying, and Jessica ended up having a breakdown where her alter, Tess, came out and started trying to attack the people she blamed for it. While Tess was pregnant, she ended up giving birth at a cabin. But due to what happened in the cabin, Tess ended up giving birth and passing out, and a third alter, which was the gatekeeper personality for Jessica, known as Bess, came out and figured this situation would be too tense for Jessica or Tess to deal with. So in order to keep a balance between them, she went to the hospital and switched the dead baby, Chloe, out for the live baby. Not knowing at the time that the child that she had swapped out was actually Jessica's cousin, Star's recently born baby, Hope. And the doctors brought it out that the baby died to Star, and Jess thought her baby had survived and named her Chloe. And they even had a funeral for little baby Hope at the time. Well, eventually, Jessica would start to show signs of her breakdown coming more and more prominent and get locked up at St. Anne's. Well, while there, Tess had come to a realization before Jessica could that the baby wasn't actually hers, that Tess remembered giving birth to the child and then thought how something seemed odd, that there was like a minor blank space, and realized that Bess had actually done the baby swap and wanted to tell Jessica what happened. But Bess, being the gatekeeper, was a stronger personality and suppressed Tess's personality to where she couldn't tell her, though eventually it would be revealed and Hope would be returned to Star, and Jessica would have to explain to her oldest daughter, Bree, that her sister had about her sister and why they couldn't live with her and how she wound up back with Star, while at the same time dealing with the fact that she now had to mourn her own child passing, as Chloe had been dead all this time. Number 4 in the situations that were considered controversial that were discussed, gay and lesbianism. In this, I'm going to use the example of, I'm just going to combine these two. Lucas on General Hospital and All My Children's Bianca and Marissa. Or Bianca, anyways. When they initially did both of these, they got backlash big time over it, thinking it was wrong. The difference being, Bianca's wasn't as bad as they had with Lucas. When they announced Lucas's, with Bianca, she ended up becoming, in her relationship, one of the most loved couples of the series before it ended. Whereas with Lucas, when it was first revealed he was gay, they ended up having to write the character off because fans were so mad. And they even had it where, in the storyline, the adoptive mother, Bobby Spencer, at first couldn't handle it because she couldn't figure out what it was. And Lucas had just shouted this out and admitted to it. And she wasn't sure how to come to terms with it, but she eventually did. Well, after Lucas being gone a long time, they eventually brought him back. And he wound up, more recently on the show, I don't remember what year it was exactly they did this, but after him having been back for a while, he ended up in a relationship with a character who worked at the hospital known as Brad. And this character, they ended up falling in love and got married. And now, if you watch the show, they even have a kid that they're raising. Though that's a different storyline entirely involved there. Number 5, and this one was a big one in my view, was the HIV/AIDS in the early 90s. early to mid 90s. General Hospital did it with a character by the name of Stone Cates. He'd been diagnosed, and for a while he'd been living on the streets even. But this character wound up getting it, and getting HIV, AIDS. I ain't sure which it started out as, but it eventually became. But it was one of the two, and it ended up killing him. Because when he was diagnosed, he had friends that were still there for him and cared for him and even helped him out and tried not to treat him any differently. But one of the characters, A.J. Quartermain, as many would know, Jason Morgan and Emily Quartermain's brother, the oldest of the Quartermain, of the Allen Quartermain children. Well, at first, because he was afraid of contracting it, and he was afraid of actually catching it, he was so afraid that one day when they were doing a lifting session in the gym at the Quartermains, he almost ended up dropping the bar on Stone because Stone was sweating and he was afraid he was going to get it from that. But eventually AJ came to be able to accept it and was able to be friends with him until he died. Being able to get back to the friendship that they had until he died. Until Stone died. AJ, unfortunately, would become an alcoholic and go severely downhill. It wasn't until, I want to say 2011 or 2012 when he came back, though I may have that year wrong. But he would come back and turn his life around completely. And become this good guy that everybody had seen in the early days. Number 6, abortion. Again, this is General Hospital specific that I know of. I don't remember the other two actually dealing with this situation. I don't know what other subs have done it, but I can't remember the other two, All My Children or One Life to Live, having done this. Though they probably did at some point. But on General Hospital, one of the characters I like, Lulu Spencer, right now known as Lulu Spencer Falconeri, though she's recently changed back to Lulu Spencer, had been interested in a guy. And she'd been after this guy. And at one point, she convinced the guy that the girl he was dating had actually slept with another guy. So they broke up. And now she decided that since she wanted to be with him, they'd have their they ended up having sex. But they'd gotten pregnant by accident. They used a condom, but the condom was defective. Well, his family and him and the character himself, Dylan Quartermain, had been trying to get her to keep the baby and that they were going to raise it and be helpful in every way possible. But she wasn't sure what she wanted to do because she had seriously considered she considered having an abortion in this case because the boyfriend had went back to his ex and they were back together at this time. But the good news was Luke Spencer had come back at this time and he was actually protective of his daughter. He gave her the world's biggest lecture, as a father would, from what I've seen on soap operas, about what she had done and now how she was going to have to deal with the consequences, but he was still going to support her. After fighting with the decision for a long time, and she had the abortion, well, the people at the town were starting, a lot of people in the town were judging her, and she had to deal with it. And a woman that would eventually become her best friend, Maxie Jones, at this time was actually her biggest, I guess you would say rival, would be the best word for this, or enemy. Well, Maxie, who was judging her, calling her a baby killer and a murderer, had actually faked a pregnancy to keep a guy that she liked, who she had initially been keeping with her by supplying him in painkillers that he'd become addicted to. Well, she wound up faking a pregnancy to try and keep him, and then faked losing the baby, but yet was judging Lulu for actually going through with the abortion by calling her the murderer and baby killer, which I found to be really hypocritical in the situation when it didn't make sense for her to do. But again, soap operas, they have everything. Action, such as if you watch General Hospital in general, either it tends to have a lot of fights, or when they actually have somebody trying to compete with Sonny Corinthos' business, you'll have a mob war and Jason going actually full on violent at times with guns. Everything. You have your romance in your couples and your tragedy when people die, whether it be an actual tragic event or they can just die of old age. But one good thing about soap operas that isn't like a lot of primetime dramas and movies, a character can be replaced, the actor playing a character can be replaced and keep the character alive on it. Such as they have done with Lulu, for example, whereas Julie Marie Berman played the character for a while, and then they brought in the character they have now that's playing, and the actress that's playing her now. The character of Jessica Buchanan on One Life to Live, played by Erin Torpey, and then played by, I forget her name. I want to say Bree Williamson's her name. That would replace Erin. The character of Maxie Jones on General Hospital, who was played by, who's currently being played by Kirsten Storms, had previously had a previous actor I actually liked a lot better, and I figured her name. But they're both good in the way they made the character their own. Okay, and now I'm going to do a top 10 of of my favorite soap characters or couples. Though there may be more than one on this list, more than one on the number, because I had to think about it and I couldn't decide between them when I did. Number 10, Luke and Laura, also known as L and L. This couple, I like that when they were together and happy, it worked out nicely, and when they didn't work out, usually Luke would leave and go on some adventure, and Laura would be there with the children when she was, or they would be happy together and everybody was happy, or they'd go their separate ways, such as currently when Anthony Geary left the show as Luke, and Laura ended up finding somebody new and is actually happy. When the show first introduced Luke to the show, in the character of Luke Spencer, he was actually brought in by the sister, Bobby Spencer, to break up Laura and a guy she had been dating at the time, Scott, who on the show is a nice level attorney, Scott Baldwin. But when they did this, Luke and Scott were actually friends for a while. And then everything that happened with Laura ended up driving a wedge between them. And then the fact that Luke wound up with Laura made it even worse. And Scott and him ended up becoming enemies. Or, well, maybe the term frenemies would be more accurate, because they would still work together at times when they had a common enemy. But otherwise, they would be against each other as much as possible. And Scott would take every opportunity he could to stick it to Luke when he had the chance. Number 9 is actually the One Life to Live character, Jessica Buchanan. Like I said, Erin Torpey played this. I know I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong, but she was the character she was the actress I actually enjoyed playing the character of Jessica. Although I would come to accept the actress who replaced her, which, like I said, I think her name is Bree Williamson, who would take over the role, and she did just as good because she made the character her own and was able to still convey the emotions that you expected out of Jessica while keeping true to the character. But when it came to couple-wise with Jessica, I like Jess and Christian, who didn't work out. That was Jessica's teenage love. And then Jessica and Antonio, who which made for an interesting twist because Antonio was actually Christian's older brother, and they were together for a while, but they eventually broke up when Jess started dating Nash. Initially, I couldn't stand the character of Nash, and I thought he would have been written off early, but as the show went on with him, I actually grew to accept him as one of Jessica's relationships, and even liked him. Even came to like the guy because it actually fixed it and actually gave him a good character in it. Number 8. But back to Jessica and her relationships. The last 2 relationships she had, one with Ford and one with I forget, Brody. Those 2 I could not accept just because they didn't make sense to me and they didn't work in my mind. Nash, when he died, it served a purpose. So again, though I became accepting of Nash, I could accept when his death happened on the show and how it affected Jess because it happened in a way that worked. With Ford, his death was just meaningless in general, and his actions were even worse. He made no sense as a relationship partner to her, to me, at least. There will be others who disagree with me on this, I know already. Number 8 on the list, Robin Scorpio, who became Robin Scorpio Drake eventually, played by Kimberly McCullough, who actually still works on the show, though not appearing as Robin a lot. She went behind the scenes instead. But with Robin, I like the character because she came from a family of super spies. She came from 2 super spies and yet found her own way in life, even after contracting HIV from where she had slept with Stone in her relationship with Stone, which made me love that couple a lot. Not because she caught HIV from him, but because that relationship actually set the relationship standard for Robin in a lot of ways for her later in life. But with Robin, she was a great character overall. Her eventual relationship with Patrick, that one I enjoyed because it was an opposites attract thing, because Patrick had this ego of thinking he was always right, that he was God's gift to women. And there's even an episode takes place on the Markham Islands where Robin reunites with her parents, and it talks about how, and Anna, her mother, does a thing where it compared. You can find this on YouTube even. Look up Scorpio. Anna Scorpio returns to, Anna Devane returns to General Hospital. But anyways, when it does this, Anna goes over a list of traits that Patrick possesses, comparing them to Robin's father, Robert Scorpio, telling Robin to stop her when one of the ideas she suggests doesn't apply to Patrick. And it was actually interesting and well played in that episode because it was funny in how it was done. Number 7 on the list, but Robin Scorpio Drake overall wins in that situation, as in that spot. Number 7, Courtney Matthews, the half-sister of Sonny Corinthos on General Hospital. She was brought in the early 2000s. She was introduced in the early 2000s. And when it was found out she was actually Sonny's sister because they share a father, well, Courtney was an exotic dancer. And one of the things that made this interesting is that she was again, the character development for her went well, and it was actually played out nicely in a lot of ways. I did regret that they actually killed her off, because I think she would have made a great character to exist even into today's world. With Courtney, what made her so great is the way that she could actually fit into the groups, and she was actually a kind-hearted person. But couple-wise, and she's played by the actress Alicia Leigh, I ain't sure how to pronounce that part, Willis. A movie on Netflix called The Student, I recommend because it's really good. She's also in the movie How High, Now that one, not as great as she was as Courtney or in the movie The Student. But anyways, couple-wise, the initial relationship I liked for her was Courtney and Jason. Shipper fans know him as Journey, which I found interesting because I actually like Journey songs, and I think at least one of them would apply to this couple. But when they broke up, which I'll explain later why I think it's a good idea, she hooked up with the character of Jasper Jacks. I do not know the shipping name for them, but I like them together. Which also on the show on General Hospital, the hotel that Carly runs, known as the Metro Court, belonged to Jasper Jacks. He bought what was once known, I forget the actual name, but it's the something hotel. I think it's called the Port Charles Hotel originally, but he bought it and changed the name when he was dating Courtney to the Metro Court. Metro for metropolitan or city area, and Court to name after Courtney. So he actually named it after the woman he loved. Well, the couple didn't work out, and not long after, Courtney would end up dating Nicholas Cassadine, which to me felt like a couple who was rushed or forced together because they didn't really seem to work out or show that great a chemistry in my view. And then Courtney would unfortunately end up contracting an outbreak that would be a disease that was part of an outbreak going on, and end up dying from it after she gave birth to her son with Nicholas, known as Spencer Cassadine. Number 6 on the list, Leslie Lulu Spencer Falconeri. Though I prefer the days when it was Julie Marie Berman or the younger actresses that played her, because the current one, I have seen very little that actually shows that she's actually trying to make the character. It's like they just throw her around, and the actress playing her, they throw her around in all these different things, and have basically gotten rid of anything that represented Lulu in the past, and rewritten her to be this character that she is today. And then the actress is portraying her, since she started on the show, at first I thought, okay, maybe it might have been my prejudice, because she was replacing Julie Marie for the role. And so initially I thought that might have been it, because I thought she was a bad actress. I thought she was doing bad in the role. She's not a bad actress. It's just the role she's playing, she doesn't seem to show care for, or seem to be showing any actual activity towards it that actually proves she actually knows this character at all. Well, then, the first time I thought this still up until recently, when they did a current storyline where she was heading for the filing of divorce, and it actually showed her breakdown. That was the first and only moment I actually saw where I actually thought she's portrayed her character to actually show concern. Now it's back to where she's complacent and not caring about the role. But also in number 6 on this list, the couple that made this part, LNL2, also known as Lucky Spencer and Elizabeth Weber. I loved this couple when they first started. I thought they were great. But eventually, I came to see what was really going on with them and could accept why they were meant better to be as friends or just caring for the children type relationship rather than in an actual relationship. Because to me, they put each other on, they got self-esteem issues where they both feel worthless in some way, or like they're living in the shadow of somebody else. In Elizabeth's case, it was her older sister, Sarah, who has not been put on the show. She has been mentioned, but has not been on the show since she left back in the early 2000s, or late 90s, early 2000s, to go to France. And then, like I said, she's been mentioned a few times, But with Elizabeth, besides them living in the shadows, and then with Lucky, he's living in the shadow of the great con artist, great con man in general, and great gambler, Luke Spencer, the king of schemes, basically. And then because of that, but then also due to Elizabeth Weber's rape in the storyline that occurred for her character when they were younger, Lucky became more of a hero complex figure where him and Elizabeth would both do their self-esteem issues and this hero complex going both ways, because Lucky felt that Elizabeth actually made him a better person and made him able to feel better about himself, and Elizabeth felt the hero complex towards Lucky because Lucky was actually the one who helped her after the rape that had occurred and get through it all and come to actually track down who had actually been the person who assaulted her. Well, because of this, Elizabeth and Lucky were putting each other on pedestals so high that neither one could live up to the expectations, and eventually one or both of them would fall and mess up the relationship, leading to a breakup, and then eventually getting back together, and then repeating the process over and over till eventually they couldn't do it anymore, and Lucky eventually left town and has not been seen since. He's made a couple of minor appearances where he'd come on, deal with something, and then leave. His last appearance, I think, was in 2015 or 2016. While Elizabeth has stayed on the series even though they've broken up, because she has children that people care about and that she cares about, and she's actually grown to be a good adult. Number 5, Georgiana Georgie Jones. I loved this character because she was the younger sister to Maxie Jones. And this character was smart and good looking, not a combination that you would typically want to have a lot of people show, but she was the more nerdy of the two, so she was less liked by a lot of people. But I loved the character because she was so smart and responsible and caring towards her family, even when they at times acted like they didn't deserve it. And then, relationship-wise, there's only one relationship that she was in that I truly accepted, and that's Dylan. That's when she was with Dylan Quartermain, because Dylan brought out Georgie's wild side and let her feel more free to find out who she really was, whereas with Dylan, Georgie brought in the responsible side and made him feel like he was actually part of something and able to be a real person in that way, that he could actually be responsible and a good person rather than just trying to show off and be the bad boy, so to speak. The relationship that I can acknowledge and to some extent accept, but not as much as I did Georgie and Dylan, is Georgie and Diego Alcazar. Diego Alcazar was the son of Diego Alcazar was the son of Lorenzo Alcazar, who was the rival to Sonny Corinthos, mob gang wise. And Diego and Georgie had developed a relationship, and Georgie actually brought out Diego's good side, good qualities more than his bad, and actually made him actually consider not going into the life that his father was leading. But after the death of his cousin, and then the fact that his father was killed, they had it where Diego had this break from reality, apparently, and became this serial killer. And ended up killing Georgie, which I think was a big mistake and a bad storyline in general to have, that he was the villain. Because as much as he had the right to blame Maxie and others for the death of his father and for the death of Sage, neither one actually committed those murders that he tried to kill. Well, yeah, none of the ones he attacked actually committed the murders. And the way he snapped and killed Georgie, it was because she was the one who showed up instead of Maxie, who, again, did not actually kill Sage Alcazar as he was claiming. That was the work of a crazy woman named Mary something, who thought who was in love with Nicholas and became obsessed with him because he resembled her ex-husband, Connor or something. Sorry, I don't remember the last name that they had. But that was the reason why Sage was killed. But Georgie and Dylan as a couple, or Georgie by herself, gets number 5 on my list. Number 4. Well, I'm sorry. I actually had a tie for number 5. The other couple that makes on this list is the shipping name, Carson. So it turns out I actually had 11 couples on this, because actually this would have ranked higher than Georgie and Dylan. But anyways, the couple known as Carson, Carly Corinthos and Sonny Corinthos. Carly, the daughter of Bobby Spencer, and who runs the Metro Court, as I said earlier. And Sonny Corinthos, the mobster and great man but good guy overall. He just ended up in the wrong line of life. But these two as a couple are interesting, because when they work together, you don't want to mess with them. But when they go head to head, things get interesting, because they will go for the throat with each other. But unlike a lot of Sonny's unlike Sonny's last girlfriend, Sonny's previous ex who had his child, Avery, his daughter Avery, by the woman who had the child, is named Ava Jerome. Unlike her, Carly and Sonny, when they go at it, yeah, they'll fight. But more often than not, Carly will they will still allow each other to see the children, because they know the other one cares for them. Yes, there has been times that both have stopped the children from being able to see the other parent, but there was good reasoning at the time for it. But now with Ava, like I said, Sonny kept her from being able to be around the child without having permission or a supervised visit, because Ava is actually way more crazy and way more dangerous than Carly could ever hope to be. Carly is dangerous in that she's protective, or that if you push her too far, she's basically a defensive type, though she has been known to be offensive when she wants to be. One of the great examples of Carly and Sonny's relationship being strong, Sonny had an affair with a woman named Angel. Not Angel, but Faith. And this woman had developed a stalker syndrome towards Sonny, thinking she was going to marry Sonny, replace Carly, and become the mob princess or mob queen of Port Charles with him. Well, Sonny decided to stay with Carly, so Faith started hunting down Carly, finding ways to torture her, trying to get her to leave Sonny. At one point, while Carly was pregnant with their second son, Morgan, sad that they actually killed his character off eventually, because he was actually a really good character later on. But when Carly was pregnant with Morgan, Faith had gotten into an elevator with her at the hospital and actually started making threats towards Carly, even talking about how she was going to end up hurting Carly and threatening the baby. Well, at the moment she threatened the child, Carly took an umbrella, the metal tip on it, shoved it right to Faith's throat while pushing Faith against the wall, and told her to keep pushing her, and that umbrella was going to find a new home. The only reason that Carly didn't go through with the threat was because Faith actually told her that if she'd done that, then Carly would be giving birth to the child in prison. And Carly didn't want that. But that would actually be how this list goes. But Carson as a couple, I think is awesome, and like I said, they're definitely at the top. They're definitely in the top ones of my list. So they would be number 5. Georgie and Dylan would technically be number 6, and everybody else drops one to where number 11 is actually Luke and Laura. So I'm sorry I miscalculated and when I did this earlier and didn't notice that I had made that mistake. So it's actually my top 11 on this list. Number 4, the couple known as Jolie or Jolie. I'm not sure which way it's pronounced. But One Life to Live's John McBain and Natalie Buchanan. One thing I enjoyed about this couple is the fact that John was so law enforcement type because he was a cop, but he was so much about the rules, but yet he would still find ways to break them at times if it meant he was protecting something that needed to be protected. Natalie had grown up the criminal lifestyle and ended up becoming a good person overall. When these two got together, you could tell that they cared for each other, and the actors who portrayed them were very good at portraying this love that they had for each other, even when they were outright denying it to each other and to the world. And I think it was a mistake when they did the crossover to have the couple break up and then do the online thing and not have John McBain on there at all. And have it where it was found out that Natalie's father was actually the one who was the reasoning behind John thinking that Natalie wanted to divorce him over a photo from where he had kissed another woman. And that he was being denied the ability to see his son until after the hearing. What's also interesting is that they never did the hearing for John and Natalie over their child, as well as the divorce itself. And then it was found out, like I said, that the father had actually been behind the divorce being filed in Natalie's name, and the custody, and the restraining order against him, the restraining order against John, keeping him from his son and from Natalie. So, and I think that was wrong, and they need to have that settled somehow. And I think personally they should get rid of the characters that Michael Easton, who played John McBain, who played the character of John McBain. I think they need to get rid of the Michael Easton characters from General Hospital, Finn, Finn, and all his doctor characters, and bring back John because he actually did that role so well and made it so believable that it would work. You could even, if they could, I think they need to find a way to bring Natalie Buchanan onto the show, since they seem to have a habit of bringing other characters onto the show from other soap operas, such as, like I said, I forget the attorney's name, from One Life to Live. They've had other characters cross over, so they could bring Natalie on, even if it's only briefly, and even have John show up. And you could write Finn off and make John and Natalie a couple on there, and Natalie and Sam could actually end up being friends. The woman who was in the photo that John kissed. Though the context of that photo would actually be really important and probably would help for Natalie to actually have forgiven John for that moment if she had actually seen the photo as it was revealed that she hadn't. And actually also keep them together Number 3 on the list, the couple known as NIM, Nicholas Cassadine and Emily Bowen Quartermain. This couple I enjoyed because of the way the story worked for them. Initially, they were friends of people. I mean, they met each other through mutual friends, Lucky Spencer and Elizabeth Weber. And Emily and Nicholas, to me, they were what you would expect for a Disney fairy tale type that actually works, or like you would have seen on the show Once Upon a Time, that tried to make the stories more realistic. Yeah, they didn't live that picture perfect fairy tale life. They had troubles. They had their ups and their downs where they broke up, got together. One was in love with the other while the other one was in a relationship with somebody else. But eventually they did wind up together, and I thought it was odd. I thought it was great that they did. And then they came up with the idea to kill off the character of Emily Quartermain, which I saw as a big mistake because it was actually a very bad idea. And again, this goes back to the Diego Alcazar murders that were occurring, and he's actually the one who killed Emily, blaming her for the death of his father and Sage because of Nicholas Cassadine. He blamed her for Sage's death. But, like I said, the character of Emily was a character who was loved by almost everybody that I know of. Yeah, she had her. Yeah, she was. If you take her and compare her to the usual Quartermain family, because she was adopted by the Quartermains when she was little, because Emily's mother had cancer and had wound up at the same treatment place as Monica. And the two had gotten to know each other, and Emily had met her, and they took her in after Emily's mother died. And again, when Emily was killed, big mistake in my view, and because the idea of killing her actually made no sense to the reasoning why when it was revealed. And again, but this couple, they ended up with the fairy tale idea of a relationship where they were happy together. And Nicholas was heartbroken and almost destroyed when Emily died, which made it even better for me because it showed how much she had of and how much she actually did matter to him. Number 2 on the list, One Life to Live, Todd Manning, Blair Kramer. Blair Kramer was known for being a con artist, and Todd even makes a reference to this when he marries her for the first time by calling her the she-wolf of Lambview. Though Blair's comment back to him is actually really funny, and I recommend you look it up on YouTube because this is actually a video thing they have on there of their history together and Todd Manning in general throughout his life. But anyways, these two made a great couple because they'd both been wrong in their life, but they both turned it around when they got to. But they both turned around their lives and started becoming better people. Especially when they found out they were going to have a child. Because they wanted to be better people. Something a lot of people don't know is that the original actress for Blair Kramer was not Cassie DePava. I'm sorry if I mispronounced her name. It was actually an Asian woman who played a woman of Asian or Hawaiian descent who actually portrayed the character. But later, they changed it to where Cassie took on the role and became Blair and made it her own. But again, Blair and Todd were a great couple because if you crossed them and they worked together, they would destroy you. You had a better chance of Carly and Sonny working together and giving you a chance at having a life afterwards than you did of Todd and Blair when they came after you. Because one example of this is the Sky Quartermain debacle. where Sky had initially gotten Blair framed for a crime she didn't commit, and Sky and Max, the guy that she was working with that was Blair's former lover, well, Sky and Max had actually started working together to try and get Blair. Well, Todd turned around, helped Blair out, and even when Max was killed, Todd and Blair actually got Sky framed for the murder. Though Sky would later get away, though Sky would never actually see prison. And actually, from then, she moved over to General Hospital. But with Todd and Blair, they became these great parents to their children. Though for the longest time, Todd was actually, because of a retcon they did when they gave him a twin brother, Todd was actually kept captive and didn't know about his son until the son was a teenager, and Roger Howarth returned to the show in 2000, I want to say 11 or 2010, after being gone for so long, and having Trevor St. John step in as Todd Manning, and when they did the retcon, proved that he was actually Todd's twin brother, Victor Lord Jr. But with Todd, he'd been kept captive all those years that Trevor St. John's character and Trevor St. John's version of Todd had been running around until Roger Howarth returned to the show. And what made it work so well is that when Roger returned, he still played Todd, as the Todd that we all know and the Todd that we needed to know. But knowing that him and the woman he raped in college, sexually assaulted, I think is the term they use now instead. But when he had done this to Marty Saybrook, he found out when he returned and was actually in prison at first because he was claiming to be Todd Manning and nobody could prove he was or wasn't. But they just knew he was some stranger who was running around these places and had caused trouble, so they had him locked up. He actually found out that he had a granddaughter by Marty's son, who's in a relationship with Star, that daughter being Hope Manning. Well, Hope Manning Thornhart. When Todd found out, it made him really angry for the fact that Star was a child in his eyes and had a kid herself. But then also, it bugged him because the woman that he had messed up way back when in college, he now had a relationship with that bonded him that he couldn't deny. Now, for my number one, but anyways, back to that. With Todd and Blair, they were great when they worked together, and when they were at each other's throats, it was fun to watch because there was no easy way out. They would actually go for the throat and rip out the heart and laugh at the person while eating it, basically. But with my number one, the couple known as Jay-Sam. Jason Morgan and Sam McCall. When the show Port Charles ended, the actress Kelly Monaco was brought on to General Hospital as the new character they come up with, Sam McCall, a con artist who was known for marrying rich people and then getting their money and leaving them, but finding a way to divorce them so that she could get the money and do this all. But with Sam, she wound up pregnant by Sonny, and Jason, in order to help preserve Carly and Sonny's marriage, had agreed to help Sam raise the child if she agreed to have it. Well, Sam was going along with this. Well, Courtney was dating Jason at this time. Initially, I was not a fan of Sam because of her ideally, in my view, trying to steal Jason from Courtney and breaking up their relationship, even though that wasn't what was happening. It was Jason's choice to do this. Well, with Courtney, when that relationship ended and she went to Jack's, Jason and Sam, after Sam lost the baby because it was stillborn, Jason and Sam would eventually wind up together and then break up and wind up together. But again, this scenario is where the couples work together. They're one of the most dangerous things you've seen, especially given the fact that neither one was working on the right side of the law for the longest time. Jason Morgan used to be A.J. Quartermain's younger brother, Jason Quartermain. Jason Moore Quartermain. Well, when he got into an accident due to A.J.'s being drunk and getting behind the wheel, Jason ended up with a traumatic brain injury that caused him to have no memory of who he was, and he never gained it back. He gained it back at time. I mean, at one point, he gained back some of the memories, but not all of them. But it was causing problems later on down the line. But at the time Jason had this accident, he'd become wild and out of control because people were expecting him to be the Jason Quartermain that he was. And he had no idea who that was, and it was bothering him that these people were trying to force him to be that person. So he started rebelling. And eventually he would come to work for Sonny Corinthos, and in order to separate himself from the Quartermains, he changed his name, taking on the name Jason Morgan. But there were two members of the family he didn't separate himself from, and that was Emily Quartermain, his sister, because she accepted who he was, and his grandmother, Lila Morgan Quartermain, who at first tried to make him into being Jason Quartermain, thinking that it was temporary, but came to accept him as who he was, who he had become. When he changed his name to Jason Morgan, she admitted that she was proud because her maiden name was Morgan. And another Quartermain that Jason didn't separate himself from was the child of A.J. Quartermain and Carly Corinthos. Michael Corinthos, who became known as Michael Corinthos the third. But everybody just knows it's Michael. When he was first born, Carly didn't want them to have it, didn't want the Quartermains to have him because they knew that they would keep her from being able to see. So she got AJ drunk and got it to where it looked like he was drinking and having problems. So she got him sent off, proved as an unfit parent in that way. Well, Carly developed postpartum depression after giving birth to Michael, and she left in order not to be a danger or risk hurting Michael. She left him with Jason for the first year of his life while she was gone because she wanted to give him his best chance and she wanted to get healthy and she couldn't stand to be around Michael at that time. Well, during that time she was gone, Jason raised Michael with the help of Robin Scorpio, who he was dating. Well, when Carly came back and wanted to be in the child's life, he allowed for it. But now back to Jason and Sam. When Jason and Sam became a couple, like I said, they had their ups and downs. They worked together greatly. Jason had one rule for Sam. That was basically a deal breaker to him. Sam was not to get involved in his business, which was the mob work he did for Sonny. Well, at one point, Sam did get involved for like a brief moment, but she did keep her promise otherwise and stay out of it. Jason had proposed to Sam twice, and both times something had happened that kept it from going through. The first time, he proposed to her. Sam backed out of the marriage at the altar because she didn't feel it was right that they were getting married just because she was having the child. The second time, I think, ended because of her sleeping with Rick Lansing and Jason getting Elizabeth Weber pregnant with the son known as Jake. Jacob Martin Spencer, I think his full name was, but Jacob Martin, who she'd chosen to name Jacob Martin because JM was the initials for Jason Morgan. But what made that one good was that when Sam and Elizabeth had gotten into it over the pregnancy, and the fact that they'd been not telling Lucky, Lucky overheard and found out. Lucky still loved the children as if they were his own, because to him they would be, and he would always be there for them. But that was the second son. He had another son later on, which I think a debate could be raised on, and it would make sense either way. And that's with Aiden. But anyways, back to my couple again. Sorry I'm getting off on these long tangents like that. But with Jason and Sam, they've been through their ups or downs. In 2012, Jason was supposedly killed off because of Steve Burton leaving. At least I think it was 2012 when he was killed off. I might have that off by a year or two, one way or the other. I might have that off by a year or two, one way or the other. But anyways, his character was cut off because Steve Burton left the show. Well, then they decided to replace him with Billy Miller, who would become Jason, so to speak. So that would later be retconned, and he become, just like with the Todd Manning thing, he would be the unknown twin of Jason that existed for so long that nobody knew about. But anyways, when Steve Burton returned as Jason, and this was all revealed, and even the whole twin brother thing was done, it actually worked out nicely. With that one, it was done a little bit better than the Todd and Victor Lord Jr. scenario was, but it still wasn't a good idea overall. But again, Jason and Sam got together, and they even got married. I mean, they're even together today. I mean, to this day. The only difference is they haven't gotten married. Or they might have, and I've forgotten it. And I'm sorry to the couple for that, because I actually enjoy them so much as a couple because they're so good together. To me, they bring out the best in each other. Like, Sam brings out the romantic and the side of Jason that's not really seen on much, the comedy, even the comical side that people know exists but doesn't really get to be seen that much with him. And with Jason, he gets Sam to be protective and gets her to be able to be vulnerable around people because he's able to get inside her heart and expose that vulnerability to where it works. Leave your comment for what you would like for me to discuss in an upcoming video, as well as what your favorite daytime drama soap opera couple is, or your favorite character from daytime drama and soap operas. Because I'm actually interested to know if anybody else has the same idea as I do. But, again, leave it in the comments along with an upcoming video, because like I said in a prior video, I can't do live streaming because apparently I have computer issues with it. So it'll help me to know what to do next. This is Joe JDF Foster signing off. Have a good one. Until our next video.